It is a winter day, 8 years prior to when it happened. It was a winter day. That solemn morning when she understood the value of life for the very first time. Ooh, what are we getting into? Her home was nestled on the side of a mountain. Around it was nothing but an inhospitable wilderness. Dragon Ball Online card game beta just went live last night. Nice. Okay, I'm reading the story, Zach. Let's get into it. Anyway, she had no neighbors or childhood friends to speak of. Things like traveling to school or playing outside were more trouble than they ought to be. Indeed, with its pure water and bright stars, it was a place rich with memories, both frustrating and halcyon. That was only during the summer, though. Winter in those mountains were extremely frigid, each morning more severe than the last. Her father would drive her to the train station after waiting 10 minutes for the engine to warm up and the ice over the windows to clear. Mind starting up the car for me? Her father would savor this morning coffee, leaving her to venture outside and rev the engine. Out the front door she would go, traversing the gardens with icy breath until she had reached the old sedan. As always, she inserted the key and started the ignition. The engine rumbled to life. Just as she proudly finished that humble task she had done so many times before. What the fuck? A shrill scream pierced the air. She knew, even though it wasn't human, that feeble sound was the cry of agony. A few moments passed. Her father came and opened the hood of the car. Creaking fan belts, a monstrous looking engine, and something that didn't belong. There was a cat, a mother by the looks of it, and her 2 kittens. 3 cats had been huddling for warmth in the engine's compartment. Ew. The mother cat was missing its head. Oh my god! One of the kittens had been mangled beyond recognition by the engine belt, and surely it died instantly. Oh my god! What the shit? The other kitten, its face half covered in blood, painted faintly. It desperately clung to its mother, or rather the chunk of meat that was its mother, with the last bit of life it could muster. Oh my god!
Are you in good hands?
Poor things. Her father lamented in their plight. The previous night had been especially cold. After he returned home yesterday, the cats must have snuck under the hood, drawn by the warmth of the engine. They had slept next to the engine and awoken to the storm of spinning belts. Cars in the 80s were not sealed particularly well, so this was not unheard of. It's okay, blank. It wasn't your fault, even though it was totally your fault. What's this game about? I don't know yet, actually. This is a visual novel game that I decided to get from the library one day. Because I was like, what's that? And then something just drew me to get it. And I was like, hey, I just realized something. I got this from the library. That means I can stream it and then take it back to the library when I'm done. She could only make out a small tuft of the kitten's gray fur. The rest of it was caked in blood of the mother and brother. I can see its skull. Oh my god! The fragile life of the speckled kitten, trembling and possibly blind, to continue to nuzzle against the dead mother's chest. Mata! Mina. She took the kitten into her arms and ran deep into the mountains to her grandfather's house. Was it because she was overcome with regret? Or was it in shock of grief? Years later, she still wasn't sure. Fighting back the welling tears, she burst into her grandfather's workshop. What's up, Games? What up, Zuxi? Her grandfather was a magician who could do anything. She had never seen magic. She never knew that magic was a fantasy straight out of fairy tales. But so was her grandfather. She had to find him. He was the only one who could help. I suppose you want me to alter this kitten's fate. The cave-dwelling magician said indifferently. The kitten needs our help, she pleaded. Whether it's a simple task or a Herculean labor, her grandfather would not say. He simply granted the girl's childish wish like a machine. The magic. Oh, God. Oh, no, the girl said. Before she knew it, however, she was holding a tiny corpse in her hand. Its fur was cold. The warmth of life had left its body, and the tears she had fought so hard back poured from her eyes. Regret spread through her chest like an endless gray sky. We're too late. Some things cannot be undone. Her mind struggled to come to grips with what just occurred. The last 10 minutes were a total blank. Who she met, what she had known, it was all as if it never happened. I'm sorry you had a rough day, Games. I hope it gets better during the stream. The only thing she was sure of was that life, once extinguished, could never return. Is somebody there? That day, it was her mistake that gave birth to me. What the fuck? Indeed. Whatever occurred that day, it was a simple day of nostalgia and longing. This is the fairy tale of 8 years ago. The day they first met that no magic can ever bring back. This game just starts, by the way. It didn't have like a main menu press start thing. It literally just starts. Arrogant, greedy, and able to only destroy, I must be a wolf. I don't have any regrets. There's no looking back. If my pride has left you behind, my sincere condolences. But at any rate, I suppose it's my fate to die at the hands of the Little Red Riding Hood. Chapter 1, Strange One. It was a quiet morning. From her bed, she could see the sky was an Asian watercolor gray. The thermometer displayed 43 degrees Fahrenheit, a rather unforgiving temperature for November. Her stomach woke her up with a growl, particularly reminding her that she had completely missed breakfast. But lazy mornings like today were, for her, a blessing. It was already well past 8 in the morning. On any ordinary weekday, tardiness would be unavoidable, but today, classes were canceled in commemoration of the school's anniversary. Gratefully, she had every intention of taking it easy for the first time in ages. Outside the window was a gloomy gray, and it reminded her more of evening than morning. It wasn't a pleasant morning by any stretch of the imagination. But having been up all night until just 3 hours ago, she couldn't care less about the weather outside. All she cared about was more sleep. As long as she could spend her morning in bed, what was happening outside was of none of her concern. She shut the curtains, then closed her eyes and tried to let sleep reclaim her. I'd like a nice, uneventful dream for 2 hours. Thank you. Blissful slumber found her soon enough. Her consciousness faded. However, oh, God damn it, it's the goddamn motherfucking goddamn phone! Her simple request would be mercilessly refused. A faint but shrill sound lingering in her ears. It was the unmistakable ring of a telephone. Much to her charging out of her habit, her eyes popped open. Oh, come on, why today of all days? The telephone was situated in the foyer on the first floor. Answering it meant walking down a 30-foot corridor that's going down a flight of stairs. In her sleep-deprived state, that distance seemed somewhere between incredibly far and astronomically far. The phone's incessant ringing continued. She knew the caller would eventually give up if she ignored it, but she chose to fight the urge. Why doesn't Alice answer it? She thought her housemate would get it, but as soon as she had to abandon all hope. The realization struck her that her housemate did not have the day off from school and was likely in class at her prestigious little Hilltop Academy. Twitter is a cesspool, games. I actually know what my TG3 roundtable is going to be about. The caller proved incredibly persistent. That persistence made the volume of the ringing seem even louder. I'm trying to sleep here. She was left with no choice but to get up, throw a top on, and leave the room. Oh, she was just sleeping titties out, huh? Now titties just a bouncing. God, it's cold. She rubbed her hands together to warm her numb fingers. The mansion's heating system was inadequate, to say the least, which meant that the winters was the very worst of the eventful uninvited guests. Never more so than on dreary mornings as this, when one didn't need to use a thermometer to know how cold it was. The mansion sat on a mountains and was surrounded by dense forest. Winters always arrived here first before moving on to the nearby towns. The robotic ring of the telephone reverberated through the long hallways. The mansion furnishings had been so perfectly maintained that it had made the place feel unlived. It seemed lonelier than it did splendid. Coupled with the dreary morning, it could pass for a haunted house. Why did I just say a human haunted? Well, it is a haunted house, I suppose. It's just too large for just the two of us. She counted more than 30 rings since it had first begun. The caller either had a lot of free time on their hands or had a good understanding of the house's circumstances. She had a strong hunch that it was the latter. The window above looked out into the gloomy sky. She hastened to catch the unrelenting ring in the act as soon as possible, though she had a feeling that her happy morning might come to a close the moment she caught it. It was here that a series of incidents began. Apologies for the lack of romance in this tale. For whether it be objectively true or merely suspicion, it is always from a gloomy, unassuming beginning that extraordinary events are set in motion. Okay. Hey, music! Hey, hey! A soundtrack! We finally getting started with this. Blah. It's time, baby. Yeah, baby. Kinoko Natsu. It's time for us to get started with this witch on the holy night. Bust it out. This is gonna be an interesting story. I wonder how long it is. Well, I know this is gonna move into February. So yeah, this will definitely be one of our February, we're gonna be doing a lot of visual novel games. So get ready for that. Cause we gotta, because it's February, that's the return of Tricolor Love Story. Season 3. Yeah, we'll be in Season 3 of Tricolor Love Story. We're gonna be doing this, and then we gotta do another romantic visual novel game, because romantic visual novel games are done in February. So the whole week is gonna be full of visual novel games that week. So if you don't like visual novel games, then I'm sorry. But if you do like them, then in February you're in for a treat, because that's what we're gonna be doing whole month. So get ready for that shit. Yeah, it's February. It's Valentine's. It's the season of love. Season of love, y'all. They didn't give me the option to save, by the way. I'm pretty sure I gotta press the start button or something. There's another visual novel game I want. I want Another Code. That game just came out. I want that game. So I can't wait for that. We love that. How do I post to get you to play Mario 1000 Year Door at the game if it's a GameCube game? Technically I think that game is for the Nintendo Switch Online, isn't it? Well, it has to be next in the queue. And next in the queue after, I have a game scheduled after Blue Dragon. Because 1000 Year Door is an RPG game. And technically I have an RPG after that one. So it would have to be after the game that I'm playing next. So I'm playing Blue Dragon right now, which was your request. And then after that, I'm doing another game. And then after that game, I'll do Mario and the 1000 Year Door. Anyway, the rain has subsided somewhat by the time she reached the school gate. Sunlight seemed to be playing peekaboo behind the clouds in the distance. It looked like it might be clear. Wait a minute. Yeah, is Paper Mario and the 1000 Year Door on the Switch already? Or is it on the eShop? Do you have to buy it? I can't remember. I'm not prepared to go to the Nintendo Home to find out either. So it looked like it might be cleared up by early afternoon. Not that it has anything to do with me, though. Does she know what the narrator's saying? Anyway, the weather reflected her luck. On top of being forced out of the house by such an early hour, she had to suffer through a winter rain. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. The sinking feeling she had only grew as she passed through the entrance and headed inside. Oh, okay. Wait, is it on the online shop or is it on the is it on the Nintendo Switch online or is it on the eShop? Because there's a difference. If it's online, I can just play it for free. If it's for the eShop, then I'm gonna need you to donate the amount that it cost. She didn't encounter any other students along the way, nor did she see anyone taking part in the club activities either. The reception desk to the facility room simply read, "Faculty closed." The school had given all the students the day off, except those explicitly summoned, like her. A fact that irked her more and more as the minutes passed. Why y'all call me on my day off? She opened the door to the facility room and headed towards the desk she had visited a number of times before. The man at the desk wore a plain shirt and suit that were nonetheless neatly pressed. Slim framed glasses adorned his face, giving off an amicable yet cunning air. Also, Navy going in. The mild-mannered image this mid-20s man presented clashed with the cigarette he smoked. He didn't appear to have noticed her yet.
Yamashiro-sensei.
Mr. Yamashiro? She closed the door with a bang. Showing no response to the sudden sound, Mr. Yamashiro lifted his head. Hey! It's Teru! It's Teru Maruki! It's Maruki from Persona! That's exactly what he looks like. It's kind of scary, actually. Hello there. Good morning, Miss Aozaki. I guess this means you got the call. Yeah, they called me at home about an hour ago out of the blue. Having graduated from high school himself, Mr. Yamashiro was not much older than the rest of the other students. For that reason, the students preferred him over the other teachers. He always had something interesting to talk about and kept conversations casual. In fact, he seemed more like an older student than a teacher, but she unfortunately didn't share her fellow students' fondness for him. She was of the opinion that teachers should come across more austere, like an iron flat that could inspire both love and hate in equal measure, not a buddy to joke with and play around. He was the exact opposite of how she felt a teacher should be. It was only natural that her manner towards him would be forced and unfriendly. Not that she ever been wired to make friendly small talk. You're in a foul mood today. Today, I'm like this every day. The matter-of-fact answer perfectly matched the displeasure displayed on her face. Her bad mood from having to get up early and the tiredness from staying up late must have collectively made her look positively visceral. If you say so, just go easy on our guests, okay? To be honest, we're not completely sure how to deal with them yet.
先生、その件ですけど、私まだ詳しい話を聞かされていないのですが。
About that, do you want to tell me what the hell's going on? Because I have no clue. Yes, as Mr. Yamashiro met her piercing eyes, he finally understood the reason behind her tone and would slowly put out his cigarette.
電話じゃなんて聞いたの?
Let's start from the beginning. What did they tell you over the phone?
転入生の紹介をするとだけです。理由も脈絡もない説明でした。
Just that I'd be introduced to a transfer student. They were a little hazy on the rest, though. One of Mr. Yamashiro's eyebrows stood up, impressed with the brevity of her answer. He could see that she was angry, not because she had been called to the school on her day off, but because she hadn't been told why she was there. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled sympathetically.
先生これが笑い話ならそろそろ帰っていいでしょうか
If this was all a joke to you, perhaps I should just go home.
いや、ごめんごめん。謝るよ。冗談じゃなくて真面目な話なんだ。ちょっと君の手を借りたくてね。
Wait, I didn't mean to laugh. This is not a practical joke. We could really use your help.
本当に転入生の問題で
So there really is just a transfer student?
うん。訳ありというか、難しいというか。
Yes, but he has, how should I put it, difficult circumstances.
彼、宗十郎くんと言うんだけど、ちょっといろいろとずれていてね。僕らが案内してあげるより、同世代の君の方が適任だと思ったんだ。
His name is Sojiro. He's a bit different, well, peculiar. So we thought someone around the same age would be the best suited to show him the ropes. She threw him an unamused look. It was negligent of them to be pushing teaching duties on her, but she did wonder how exactly this transfer student was peculiar. Maybe he meant the student had behavioral problems or was difficult somehow. But peculiar? She didn't have the slightest idea what that meant.
ずれてるなんてそう使わない表現だけど
You don't hear a teacher call someone that every day. She had her doubts, but swept them aside for now. This wasn't the time to get distracted by more concerns. The fact remained that this conversation was all the peculiar she could handle, and she needed more information. She was already beginning to fantasize about saying no and curling up in her warm bed at home.
一つ質問があります
I have a question.
何？あ、学年は君と同じ2年生だよ。性格は落ち着きがあって人の話をよく聞くタイプ。
Yes?
裏を返せば覇気がないとも取れるけど、それならそれで付き合いやすいだろ。
Yes? He's a second year student like you. He's well behaved and a good listener. He's not the most energetic individual, but that just means he'll be easier to get along with, right? I looked at a Mario Thousand Year Door is getting remade just like Mario RPG, so most likely I have to donate, which I don't mind because I want to see you play the game next anyway. I'll donate when Nintendo releases the date for the game come out. Cool. He's not in the same homeroom class as you, but I'm sure you all will get along just...
そういったことは本人から直接聞きますし測ります
I'll be the judge of that when I actually meet him.
そうではなくなぜ私なんでしょうか
And none of that answered the question, why me? Though her tone was still stern, it was clear that she was willing to at least cooperate. She had decided to put her feelings of dissatisfaction aside and focus on the task at hand. Forcing herself to act empathetic in spite of her self-absorbed nature was something she was used to. Paradoxically, is that a word? Y'all made that up. Paradoxically. Anyway, this force of will was also the reason teachers put up so much of faith in her. To a point. At times, that strength shattered expectations, and on occasions, they were left with no choice but to treat it like a natural disaster and weather it until it passed. That was how Mr. Yamashiro came to deal with her as the years passed
も
over.
う一度だけ聞きます
I'll ask you one more time, Mr. Yamashiro.
それで
Why does it
な
have
ぜ
to be
私
me?
なんでしょうか
Pressured by a question without a clear yes or no, he answered.
うん、それはね。
Well, about that.
別に青崎くんが先生方に敬遠されているのと同じぐらい信頼されていて、学校のためなら教師も生徒も一緒くたに切って捨てる鉄の生徒会長だからじゃないよ。
Oh, wow, it just saves. Nice. I'm looking at some. Oh. I'm gonna be real here. Do they have to talk? Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and lower that voice off. I don't need them to talk. Oh, wait, but if they... No, I do need them to talk. That's a lie. Because I won't know who's who. They don't do the thing where they show the characters' names. Yeah, I kind of have no choice but to have them talk. Plus, there's a mute voice option, like, right down there. Well, never mind, then. Oh, we can bring up the text speed, though, a little bit. There's actually a lot of controls here. Cool. Back to the story. You're probably thinking it's because you're the Iron Fist ruler of the student council and are willing to strike down both teachers and students for the good of the school, but you'd be wrong.
それ以外にこんな呼びつけを受ける理由はないと思いますけど。
I can't imagine any other reason you'd call me. Her eyes did nothing to hide her disbelief as she glared at him. Strength far beyond that of an ordinary 17-year-old girl, coupled with the youthful beauty of one. Did they have to add that last part? Mr. Yamashiro let slip a genuine smile, admiring the miraculous balance of qualities.
いや、責務だけでいいなら僕がやってるさ。この人選に関しちゃ、教師や生徒会長といった役職も関係ないよ。
I mean, I'd handle this myself if it was just about pure obligation. But who gets this job has nothing to do with whether they're a teacher or on the student council.
なんていうか、こんな頼みを損得抜きで聞いてくれるのは君だけだと思ってね。適任ですからと強く推薦したわけ。
I just felt that you were the only one who would entertain this kind of request without needing to weigh all sides. That's why I insisted it be you. In other words, he knew she wouldn't say no.
山城先生。
Mr. Yamashiro.
うわ、怖っ。もう睨まない睨まない。
Oh dear. Would you stop glaring at me like that already? At least put on a smile for your new schoolmate.
とまあ、納得してくれたならすぐに移動しよう。もうずいぶん待たせてしまっているからね。
Look, if you're agreeing to help, we should go see him. We've already kept him waiting long enough as it is.
それと、雨の中ご苦労様。帰りはもちろん車で送るよ。
And because you braved the rain to get here, I'd happy to give you a ride home. How come you didn't offer to pick her up? How come you didn't offer? You called her, which means you could have drove your ass over there, picked her ass up, and then drove her to the school. That way she wouldn't have had to walk in the rain in the first fucking place. Sorry about that. I'm just saying. Mr. Yamashiro stood up gracefully. I'm good, thanks, she replied before turning and walking out of the faculty room. He had been waiting for about an hour. Damn! While he did, the rain showered lightened into a drizzle. His mind wandered as he listened to the sound of the raindrops. Droplets. The rain droplets hit the fucking earth. Now get the fuck out of my sight before I rain on you too. Anyway, the rain was full with neatly arranged rectangular tables. He was the only one there. Quite some time had passed since he had been brought to this room and asked to wait. Even the best behaved student might grow dissatisfied or anxious with the situation by now, but the boy stuck to his spot like a scarecrow. He was chilled to the bone. It was the end of November, and the low temperature in the morning had marked the start of winter. The room was not much warmer. The heater hadn't been turned on. Either he had missed the teacher telling him to turn it on, or he'd never seen one in his life. He breathed lightly on the freezing fingers as aimlessly surveyed his surroundings. This dreary place was apparently a meeting room. The other students might have considered it a wonderful place to meet, but to him, it was a drab and overly spacious. It was a lifeless place that reminded him of an arid cave. Stuck in his cold room with absolutely nothing to do, his mind turned to what they wanted to discuss. Unable to come up with a solid answer, he returned his attention to the sound of the rain. The rain resembled the rain in the mountains, though he could still recognize it barely. Its smell and sound were harsher, but at the end of the day, rain was still rain. So even this world, alien as it was, could have something in common with the mountains. That travel detail perked him up a little. He liked how the town looked soaked in the rain. Naturally preferred sunny weather, but he liked the rain in its own way. The fog from the rain had soaked up the scent of the soil. It reminded him of home. It was at times like these that he was numb to the anxiety of the city gave him. But then he let out a discouraged sigh. How pathetic. He had already been here 2 weeks and thought of this hometown. It still made him sad. Perhaps feeling that way he was being unfair to his new life. He composed himself and continued to wait patiently. As if having a passion for distraction, his attention returned to the sound of rain once more. Waiting like this didn't seem particularly hard for him. He quietly endured the numbing cold an hour alone with the calm, deep breaths. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. A strong point of his, or not, he was astonishingly patient. It was certainly helping him out in this moment. She, on the other hand, was livid. The profile of the transfer student had been explained to her on the way to the meeting room. She was told that he had lived his whole life up in the mountains without any electricity. What the fuck? That meant that more than half of civilized society would have been an utter mystery to him. What a miserable life of isolation. How is that even possible in a post-war Japan? He's like Robinson Crusoe. She had every right to be angry. His village had apparently remained isolated in the mountains for many years. Contact with villages in the foothills of the mountains only occurred once a month or so, which was unfathomable in modern Japan. Although expressways in Japan Rail, the old national railways, now span the country like arteries, it wasn't entirely impossible for mountain villages like his to exist. To be. But she couldn't imagine how someone born to such circumstances would think or live.
電気がないって、村に行き渡っていないだけで公衆電話ぐらいはあったんですよね。
When you say no electricity, you mean in general, right? Like he must have an access to a public phone or something?
なかったそうだよ。こっちに暮らすようになって、まず驚いたのが電話だそうだし。
Apparently not. He mentioned how shocked he was by the phones when he started living here.
電話って便利ですね。なんて真顔で言われてね。そういえばそうだなぁと再確認させられたぐらいだよ。
I kid you not. He said, "Wow, telephones are so useful. Couldn't really deny that, could I?" She shot a sidelong glare. She shot a bombastic side-eye glare his way as he laughed. It seemed that the native of that country boy had cheered up Mr. Yamashiro a bit.
駐在もいないってことか。うちも実家は山奥ですから、 電気が通っていないのはありえないとは言いませんけど。
They probably didn't have any police officers either. My family home is up in the mountains, so it's not inconceivable that they wouldn't have
そい
electricity.
つ、学校も知らないんですか？
But he doesn't even know what school is?
どんなものかは知っていたそうだけど、実際来るのは今日が初めてらしい。それで緊張していたのかな。あまり会話も弾まなかった。
Nope, but he had heard of them. But this is apparently the first time visiting one. Maybe that's why he's nervous. He wasn't very talkative.
ああいうのも野生児っていうのかな。狼に育てられた狼少年みたいな。いや、探検隊の話だね。
He's almost what you would call it feral, like a boy raised by wolves. I suppose that makes us like Lewis and Clark. Now's not the time for fucking jokes.
怖いな、青崎くん。冗談だって。そう睨まないでくれ。
Hey, you're scaring me, Aozaki. Her name is Aozaki. Hey, you're scaring me, Aozaki. I was joking. Go easy, okay?
大丈夫。
Oops,
話して
sorry.
みた感じ、おとなしい子だったから。なんていうか、言葉の通じない小動物みたいな感じ。
And don't worry, I got the feeling from talking to him that he's a nice kid. He's almost like, I don't know, a cute little animal that doesn't speak human.
山城先生、その例え、気休めになってませんから。
Your jokes and metaphors aren't helping. She gave her blunt reply. She tried to simulate her mind with what life would be like without... She tried to simulate what her life would be like without electricity. But the thought of it looked her sour mood from bad to worse. After all, it was a world that she had never known. She could understand why the teachers had given up. She too wanted to give up and in return in her warm bed, but her good-for-nothing pride was holding her hostage. Not only did the teachers believe she was up to the task, but she also believed that she could do it. It wasn't as easy to go back on her word no matter how bad things looked after the fact. She walked along the hallways, the rain pattering in the background. The meeting room was already in sight. With a furrowed brow, she fixed her long hair in anticipation of meeting the unknown stranger within. Her elegant strides were like those of a confident general going into battle.
いや、青崎くん、
Aozaki.
君を信頼してる僕だけど、念のため確認しておくよ。なんていうか、優しくね。
I believe... God, this sentence is longer than what's actually written. Because when I start talking, it's going to be shorter than what he just said. Anyway, I believe in you and all, but I'll say it again. Be nice, okay? Can you at least try to smile?
作り笑いは苦手です。一応努力しているつもりですが。
I'm bad at faking smiles, but I'll do my best.
ああ、そうなんだ。それはよかった。
Really? That's a relief.
いやー、ほんとよかった。青崎くんにも苦手なものってあったんだね。
I really mean it. It's good to know that you're not good at everything. Mr. Yamasiro's shoulders slumped the second they reached the meeting room. As he put his hands to the door, his eyes seemed to say to her, "Be nice, please." This only made her more irritated.
分かってるわよ。愛想が悪いってのは。でも笑顔なんて意識して作るものじゃないんだし。
I already know I'm not the friendliest looking person in the world, but I can't just make myself smile at the drop of a hat.
だいたいそういうインスタントな人付き合いなら飛び丸の方が向いてるって。
You should have asked Tobimaru if that's what you were after. She sighed about her social shortcomings, but then it occurred to her that being called into school on a day off while sleep deprived wasn't anything to smile about anyway. She also thought that the person responsible for this mess would be better off attending elementary school. It might not be his fault, but neither was it her duty or obligation to do a teacher's work for them, at the very least. They could have used her brains and organization all on this normal school day, another compliment that she wanted to voice later.
いや、というか敵。なんであろうと敵。悪いけど、情状酌量以前に敵。
I hate him already. He's my sworn enemy. I haven't even met him. Sorry, but I couldn't care less about his extenuating circumstances.
間が悪いのはお互い様っていうか、ほんと、なんでよりにもよってこんな忙しい時に。
You think this isn't awkward for me too? Honestly, why did this have to happen when I'm so busy? You weren't. You were sleeping. Her pounding headache from her lack of sleep had boosted her aggression by 10%. No matter how harmless the guy was on the other side of the door, maybe anyone who disturbed her sleep was the enemy. And just as she had reached the peak annoyance, Mr. Yamashiro opened the door to the meeting room. The door slowly slid into view. She didn't care for formalities. She just looked straight ahead and stormed into the room. And found herself face to face with the most unusual opponent. Before we go on, let's see this from another perspective. Turning back the clock just a little bit. You don't have to do anything. For some, those words are a priceless luxury. For others, an unbearable torture. From the proactive girl, it was definitely a former thought that she'd be too suspicious for the motives of anyone giving such a gift to accept it. For the passive boy, it was definitely the latter, a bitter thorn that had made him homesick, though this very moment his mind was still distracted by the wait for his face reveal and any discounted. He maintained perfect posture as he stared at the gray sky. He had already waited a whole hour, but figured they must have had their reasons for making him wait. As long as he had the sound of rain to soothe him, he could keep on waiting.
でも、そろそろ9時を過ぎるのか。どうなんだろう。
It must be 9 o'clock already. Yeah, that seems about right. He had been vaguely keeping track of the time as he had listened to the rain. Due to the holiday, the school building was completely silent, except for the pattern of rain hitting the windows. The mood felt as damp as air. It was then he heard the heavy clatter of footsteps approaching.
よかった。忘れられているかと思った。
Finally, I thought they had forgotten about me. He could hear 2 sets of footsteps, one heavier set belonging to an adult. He breathed a sigh of relief as the door slid open.
すまないね。随分とお待たせしちゃって。
So sorry to keep you waiting. The first person he had saw was a man wearing glasses and an awkward smile. That's Mr. Yamashiro, the one who brought me here.
あれ？里中先生いないんですか？
Hey, where's Mr. Satanaka?
話し相手になってあげてと言ったのに。
Hey, where's Mr. Satanaka? I told him to keep you company. He shouldn't have left you here. Mr. Yamashiro scratched his head, looking increasingly apologetic. And then, from behind him, hey, it's way too fast. It's not too late. Anyway, with a tight-lipped expression that made it clear that she didn't want to be there, a dark-haired girl with a determined look in her eyes appeared. What's with the bandages around his neck? Yo, this is epic as shit. Top tier gameplay right now. Hey, yo, this music go though. Sojiro gulped. The sound of the rain on the windows faded into nothingness. That's when he knew he fucked up. This is how it felt when time stood still. Yo, she looked pissed. Hey, she's got those little hair thingies. You know that thing that some anime girls have where their hair just for some reason defies logic and does like these little cat ear situations? She blinked quickly a few times as if taken back. Why was anyone's guess? The boy was everything she expected a native country boy to look like. However, she felt something she couldn't understand. His eyes widened slightly as if taken back. The reason was obvious. Putting his feelings into words was a different matter altogether, so we will never know exactly what he expressed in that experienced in that moment. Ooh, I love this song. It's so good. That's when it hit him. He sensed he had been touched by the hands of destiny.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生の静木宗十郎くん。
Allow me to introduce the two of you. This is the transfer student I mentioned, Sajiro Suzuki.
で、こっちの彼女が静木くんの案内役。
And this is the girl that'll be showing you around.
うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
She's our student council president and came here on our day off just to welcome you. Her name is Aoko Aozaki. Her name is Aoko Aozaki. I added an extra code to her name. It's Aoko Aozaki. His voice and the sound of the rain seemed distant. This is how they first met. Such was their start for better or worse, like an ethereal beauty of fireworks. It was commonly believed among the students that Aoko was always in a foul mood. But the gossip was 90% prejudice, as Aoko simply didn't have the time to be irritated 24/7. The reality is that she simply didn't want to explain herself at all times, and therefore she seemed angry about something obvious or not. The idle gossip did, however, lead to her earning the title of one of the school's 7 deadly threats. The remaining 10% of gossip was right on the mark. Aoko herself often had the feeling that her tendencies to feel animosity towards harmless things was akin to what a chronic headache sufferer might experience. Today fell under that 10%. For today, her anger was pure, and her childish and selfish display was befitting for her actual age. The meeting room was dimly lit, awash in colors of rain. To reduce electricity costs, school's regulations forbid the use of lights during the day. It was the setting. This was the setting. This was the setting the three of them found themselves in. God damn it. This was the setting the three of them found themselves in. Her first impression was a calm demeanor, reminded her of a field of wildflowers. In spite of his perfect posture, he seemed subdued and frail. And though describing him as meek would be going too far, at the very least, he was passive. Even through his uniform, she could see that he was thinner than average. His darker hair was unkempt and came across as a wholly forgettable boy. If she looked at him in a mere positive light, she would describe him more a young man than a boy. Boy! It was a calm demeanor that made him seem more mature. Was it the cause of Aoko's reasonless reaction? He seemed almost too at home in the meeting room. She left with the impression that it was her and the teacher, not this outsider where the guests were here. She felt an undefinable aggravation building within her, almost as if her right to be here was in question. Aoko felt herself raising her natural defenses. She looks pissed. What's with me? Why am I so fucking angry?
私今わけもなく
Am I? Oh wow, that's literally what she said. Am I really this angry for no reason? Why she look like Taya from Yu-Gi-Oh? She hated not understanding things. Her own emotions in particular. It pained her less than you would imagine for a perfectionist like her, but it still nagged at her like a thorn on her side.
ほら青崎くん挨拶してあげなくちゃ
Aozaki, why don't you introduce yourself? Mr. Yamashiro attempted to relieve the tension was equally irritating.
挨拶
Introduce myself, huh? After casting a nasty glance in the teacher's direction, Aoko turned to face the boy. From an outsider's perspective, it might have looked like a stare down. And in that instant, the accumulation of her emotions stayed hurtled towards the innocent boy and skewered him.
Yeah, 待たせたね、しずきくん
Again, sorry for the wait, Suzuki. Hearing his name, Sojiro came into his senses. His stunned gaze shook loose. He took a deep breath to clear his head. Chalking it up to nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke out of smile and turned to the girl standing beside him.
紹介するよ彼が転入生のしずき宗十郎くん
I'll do the introductions then. This is the transfer student, Sojiro Suzuki.
でこっちの彼女がしずきくんの案内役うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ
And this is our student council president who came here on our day off just to show you around. Her name is Aoko Aozaki. Didn't they just do this? They literally just did. Are they doing it from both perspectives? Having been introduced by Mr. Yamashiro. Mr. Yamashiro, the girl took a step forward. Her eyes were merciless. Her stare, unspoken threat to violently trample her opponent. Sojiro, on the other hand, managed to keep his own composure despite the shock at how confrontational she appeared. He had never been greeted quite like this before, but supposed mistakenly that this is how people are treated each other in the city. Battle! The exchange must have looked quite dramatic to an onlooker. A girl ready for brawl. An earnest country boy desperate to understand. Shit, I keep pressing that Y button on accident. It was a murderous limbo, especially for anyone in the room with them. Like Mr. Yamashiro, for example. While he had thought that he might have made the right decision in choosing honor students to help him out, she was inexplicably in a bad mood, and the tension in the air was undeniable. It was at this moment he realized he fucked up. His failure. His realization had come far too late. One false move, and this girl from whom no problem was too large would become a storm that would rock the very foundations of this school. Just as the almighty Joker card would bring either fortune or disaster, the sole teacher who had been present at the time would come to bear blame for the scandal that ensued.
いけてる二人とも気は合うようだね
Wow, you two really seem to have hit it off.
それじゃあ僕はこの辺でいいかな
I suppose I can leave you two to it then. Mr. Yamashiro laughed nervously as he crept towards the door.
僕は職員室にいるから終わったら来るように
I'll be in the faculty room. Stop by when you're finished.
いいかい青崎くんくれぐれもだぜ
You'll be alright, won't you, Aozaki?
なんていうか生徒会長としての度量の広さをこの際僕に信じさせてほしいかな
You're the student council president. Don't let me down. Let's get one thing certain right now. I fucking hate you for no real reason. I woke up at motherfucking 9 o'clock a.m., headache brawling, bitch a crawling, walking down at 40-degree temperature in the rain just to talk to your ass. On my day off, no less. Anyway, Mr. Yamashiro left, leaving the two in a locked-eyed state, one in which one set of eyes was doing all the glaring. All the remaining in the room was a naive boy and a cross-armed guarded girl. Will they talk to each other? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. Anyway, the two lingered in silence. They resembled shogi players agonizing over their first move, though ultimately it was only Aoko that had considered the scene that carefully. She decided to put her irritation aside for the time being. With no real reason to feel revulsion towards him in the first place, she sighed deeply and faced Sojiro.
まあいいわ。山城先生がヒルアンドンなのは今に始まったことじゃないし。
Whatever. It's not like this is the first time Mr. Yamashiro landed me in it.
それで、あなた名前は？
So, what was your name again? Her tone was nothing if not reproachful, though he had done nothing to offend her. But the boy failed to pick up on it. Incapable of such venom himself.
ああ、静木宗十郎かな。君は青崎さんだったね。
I'm Sojiro Suzuki, he replied, and you're Miss Aozaki, right? For whatever reason, he came across as a happy in his response.
さんはいいわ。柄じゃないから。
Drop the mess, it's not my
こ
style.
っちは静木くんでいい？
Is Suzuki
いい
fine?
って何が？
What do you mean?
だから呼び方。
What do you mean? What do I mean?
何を？
Hello? Did I say something weird?
いや、すごく。
Yeah, very. The boy replied immediately as if it was a natural response, but second-guessed himself.
いや、いいんだ。ごく一般的なんだろう。
Never mind. That must be normal here.
静木くんで頼む。君は青崎でいいんだよな。
You can call me Suzuki. If you don't mind you mind if I call you Aozaki?
よろしく。
Suit yourself. She followed her blunt reply with a swift turn away from him. While she was hardly thrilled at the prospect of the task at hand, it had been entrusted to her. It was her personal policy to see it through to the end.
悪いけど、優しくしてあげる気はないから。
I'm sorry, but I'm not in the mood for
時
pleasantries.
間も惜しいし、手早く行くわよ。
Time is short, so let's get this over with.
それは助かる。やっぱり時間は大切だ。
Sure, I know your time is valuable. Alko's blunt rancor was lost to him once again. Humans tend to be overly conscious about being ignored, whatever form that it takes. But despite being peeved at landing none of her attacks, Alko did her best to act professional and directed her guests into the hallways. There was no sunlight in the hallways, nor any sign of life. This was more like a prison in a cave that was the meeting room. As it dawned on Alko that the hallway matched her mood, she sighed once again.
まず聞いておくけど、山城先生から聞いたことは理解してる？
First things first, I'm the realist. Anyway, first things first, did you understand everything that Mr. Yamashiro explained to you?
ああ、学校の仕組みについては分かった。
Yeah, I get how the school works.
この建物全部に同い年の人間がいるなんて、ちょっと想像できないけど。
But still, it's hard to imagine that everyone here is around the same age.
そう、よかったわね。
I see. Great. Alko rubbed her forehead. This Sojiro kid had no idea what he was in for. Apparently, all he heard about school was that it was a place where a lot of people met to study. High school teachers imparted to students their knowledge in various fields of study while fostering discipline and creativity. But never did Alko imagine that she would have to explain the concept of school itself to someone. Yes, fundamentals were important, but this was absurd. She had serious doubts on whether she had even handled classes, but Mr. Yamashiro insisted that things would work out somehow. Sojiro managed to pass the transfer exams after all, barely.
私には関係ないけど。
Not my problem. Alco grumbled mentally as she walked down the hallway. She counseled herself with the fact that today would be the only day she'd spend with the boy out of time. At least she'd try to keep it that way.
青崎、
Aozaki? He asked calmly, trying to get her attention. What?
こっちも一つ聞いていいかな。
Can I ask you something?
だから何？
Yes, what is it?
俺の気のせいだと思うんだが、君はまるで何かを睨んでいるように見える。
I could be wrong about this, but you seem upset about something.
やはり今朝は悪いものでも。
You're not a morning person, are you? His gaze revealed earnest concern, as if asking her if she remembered to eat breakfast. Nice. It was like another hammer to her head. She is pissed. She is pissed. It's true that Alco had been glaring at Saldro the entire time. Glaring red-hot daggers, in fact. Not just at him, but the universe. Even on her best day, her roommate used to remark,
青子の視線は普通の人には厳しいわ。
Most people can't handle your scowl, Alco.
もう少し多くのことに寛大になるべきね。
It wouldn't hurt you to be a little bit more tolerant. She had been warned that her emotions were so naked on her face that people treated her like a powdered keg. How naive the boy could be that he could not pick up on this.
私をバカにしてるってわけじゃなさそうよね。
He's making fun of me. No, he couldn't be. Even she found her own attempt to reassure herself unconvincing. It began to dawn on Alco far too late that compared to her, this laid-back transfer student might as well have been from another planet.
いいわ。言葉にしないとわからないようだから言うけど、まるでじゃなくて、ズバリそうなの。
Look, let me spell it out for you because you're just not getting it.
あなたの気のせいじゃなくて、私は視線で遠回しに感情を表現してたの。いちいち声に出すのも会話にするのも面倒だから。
It's just not your imagination. I'm angry and anyone could see that in my eyes. It's easier than trying to make conversation. In response to her words, the Martian clapped his hands together.
なるほど。どうしてそうしたいのかはわからないが、確かにそっちの方が手っ取り早い意思表現だ。
That makes sense. I don't know why you want to do it that way, but I get that it's a faster way to express yourself. Saldro accepted her reasoning without argument, though he still had no idea what kind of emotion she was trying to express. It was as if he could hear the words but didn't get the grasp of meaning. Ideas that could have connected were instead separated into blocks.
確かにずれてるわ、こいつ。
So it's true. He really is peculiar. Mr. Yamasiro's words made sense to her now. What was odd about this boy went way beyond nativity. A stranger in a strange land he may be, but it was only civilized to forgive him some jet lag-induced confusion.
じゃ、とりあえずあなたの教室に行くから。
Visit your classroom. She had regained her composure. Saldro raised his hand and stopped in his tracks.
あと一つ。
Just one more thing. Alco waited for Saldro to continue. The boy was patient to a fault. She rubbed her forehead with her hand again, nursing a vaguely feeling of uneasiness.
これもちょっとした疑問なんだが、なんで君は怒ってるんだ？
I wanted to ask, why you so angry? Or why you tripping?
怒るのが商売とか、そういう家柄の人なのか？
Is it your line of business or does it run in your family? Damn, couldn't be me. A long silence. Though she knew it wouldn't change the situation, she remembered her regret at answering the phone that morning. She meant no harm. She repeated this thought like a mantra in an attempt to keep her impulses in check.
別にあなたのせいじゃないから気にする必要はないわ。
It's not you if that's what you're worried about.
ただこの一瞬とお昼まで眠っていた場合を計りにかけたらあまりに利益の違いがあって。
Why is that sentence this long? I just rather be somewhere else right now. With that vague answer, she started to walk again and turned her gaze away from this rude stranger named Seijiro Suzuki. While what constitutes normal is certainly up for debate, most would undoubtedly refer to him as so. He was simple, a nice boy with the nondescript features. He was if he were an ice cream flavor, it would be the cone. No, I'd be vanilla though. Just the crunchy ass cone. The waffle cone itself. And Seijiro found Aoko to be a very businesslike too, and full of life. There was a certain purpose to her movements as they began and ended in an orderly fashion. The way her finger raised when she pointed at things. The way she made across the hallways to the classrooms. The way she occasionally glanced back at him to make sure he was keeping pace. Each and every movement was so impressive that he couldn't take his eyes off of her. She was smexy as fuck. Aoko showed him his classroom, Class C of the 11th grade. The room certainly displayed more of a human touch than a previous meeting room, but Saojiro, why I just fuck his name up like that? But Saojiro was none the wiser as it functions. Aoko gave a brief explanation before they visited individual subject classrooms, as well as the gym, cafeteria, locker room, and school infirmary. Saojiro asked so many questions that much time had passed before they had reached the AV room on the second floor. Oh dear. Saojiro stopped, looking genuinely concerned. It's 20 to 1 already.
嘘でしょ?
Huh?
うちの校舎そんな広くないわよ。
You're kidding, right? This school isn't that big. We'll be done soon. The tour began around 10, which meant 3 hours had passed. A tour of the school shouldn't take anywhere near this long.
そうだったわね。
Maybe if
先々で根掘り葉掘り聞かれちゃ、そりゃ何時間でも経つわ。
maybe if you
日が
didn't
暮れていないのが不思議なくらいね。
maybe if you didn't ask so many questions, we'd be done by now. It's a miracle it's still light out. Aoko glared at Saojiro. She was being sarcastic, of course, knowing full well it would never pick up on it. Is he? To her surprise, he looked down apologetically, unable to hide his dejection.
なんだこいつ。
Oops,
ちゃんとしてる。
I think I broke him. I also look like Taya from Yukio. The guy before her was now nothing like earlier. In contrast to seeing his once impenetrable veneer when they first met, she found herself feeling sympathetic. Momentarily, at least, until her irritation returned in full force.
で、何がまずいの？覚えることが多すぎてパンクしたなんて言わないでね。
What's the hurry? Don't tell me your brain's not big enough to remember all this stuff.
いや、それもあるけど、学校のことは別にして1時になるとまずいんだ。
Well, there's that, but it's more about it almost being 1 o'clock. Saojiro's gaze wandered as if he was worried about something. If he worried about whether he would have a hard time seeing it as there were no windows in this hallway.
へえ、時間を気にするってことは用事があるのね。
Don't tell me you got somewhere better to be.
そう。人の予定を引っかき回しておいて、自分だけ好きなようにやろうって言うんだ。
That's perfect. I take time out of my day for you, and you don't even have the decency to even hang around.
なんだ、顔に似合わずいい人ね、君。
You're a real piece of work. You know that?
いや、褒めても何も出ないぞ。
Thanks, I guess. That's a nice of you to say.
誰も褒めちゃいないわよ。
It's not a compliment! She yelled at him, unable to hold back her fury.
で、
Well,
で
well, what?
それで一体何の用なの？
What's happening in 20 minutes? Saojiro's face lit up as he finally understood what she was asking him.
そこは秘密にしておきたい。
It's a secret. He said with a perfectly straight face.
慣れ始めたつもりだったけど、こいつのこういったテンポには失神しそうになるわ。
Ugh! Every time I think I've got this guy figured out, he always finds a way to trip me up! Her frustration was natural. Still, she did everything she could to stifle her feelings and to fake smile.
しずきくん？
You want to repeat that, Suzuki? She took a step forward.
秘密だってば。
Like I said, it's a secret. Feeling the mood change drastically, Saojiro took a step back. And another. And another. No matter how many steps back he took, she kept edging towards him. She was smiling, but he thought that he could see the blood boiling beneath her skin.
これ最後の質問にしとくわね。
Last question.
あなた、私をからかって楽しい？
Do you enjoy mocking me? He had no intention of mocking her, though at this point, he doubted presenting any evidence to prove that this would do much to erase that forced smile on her
わかった
face.
説明する。
Let me explain. His arms raised in surrender. She halted her advances and freed her face from the unseemingly smile.
実は1時からアルバイトがあるんだ。でもここはそういうの禁止なんだろ？
The truth is that it's my part-time job shift starts at 1, but students aren't allowed to have jobs, right?
そうだけど、あ、禁止されてるから秘密にしようと思ったの？
Yeah.
だね。それなら許可さえ下りていれば問題ないわよ。
Yeah, wait. You weren't being tight-lipped because you thought you'd get in trouble. All you have to do is get permission, you dweeb.
知ってる。試験の時に許可をもらってる。
I know, and I did. I got permission when they accepted me to the school.
へえ。
Really? Alco's face lit up as she realized that he might not be a piece of work the piece of work she thought him to be. Yet?
しかし許可は一つしかもらえなかった。
But I only got permission for one of my jobs.
一つって、あなた掛け持ちでバイトしてるの？
Wait a minute, you hustling in these streets? You have more than one job?
これでも2件減らしたんだ。
Well, I quit 2 of them.
生活費だけで大変なのに学費まで稼がなくちゃいけない。なのに働き先は一つだけというのはあんまりだと思わないか。
Well, living expenses are bad enough, but now I have to earn money for school as well. Don't you think it's unreasonable of them to only let me work one job?
いや、あんまりなのはあなたの方だと思うけど。
No, I think you're the one being unreasonable. Though still irritated, her opinion of him changed a little. She was impressed that he was able to take care of his tuition and living expenses all on his own. She could also empathize with having no time to oneself. Her anger began to subside. The words part-time job were about the last thing she ever expected to hear out of the country boy's mouth.
そういうことなら仕方ないわね。
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
いいわ、行きなさいよ。事情は分かったから。
It's fine, you can go. I get it.
青崎はいいのか？
Will you be okay? She had no idea what this question meant, but she at least understood he was trying to be considerate, which also took her by surprise. She figured he'd be just as dense about people's feelings as he was about everything else.
別に、私もこのまま帰るから。
I'll be fine. Just head home. First, though, she thought it best that they both stop by the faculty room. Mr. Yamashiro had mentioned that the transfer students' procedures had already been completed, so all that remained for him was to just sign off on their duties.
先生、案内終わりました。
I finished showing him around.
それはお疲れ様。しずきくんもお疲れ様。それで 校舎を回った感想はどうかな？
Great job! That goes for you too, Suzuki. What do you think of our school?
ありがとうございます。なんというか、とても学校ですね。
Thank you for the tour. It's like a real school.
そうかそうか。うん、明日から頑張りなさい。
That's great to hear. Okay then. Best of luck starting tomorrow. She had no interest whatsoever in this pointless wrap-up meeting.
山城先生のことは気にしないでいいわ。
You'll have to forgive Mr. Yamashiro.
教え子に厄介なことを押し付けてふんぞり返っているぐらい職員室が好きなんだから。何時間でも待ってるでしょ。
He likes the faculty room so much he chooses to kick back there while getting his students to do his dirty work for him. I bet he spends hours in there.
待ってるべきじゃない？
Actually, that's pretty smart of him.
そうか。青崎がいいんならいいんだな。
Okay, Aozaki. If you're fine with it, then so am I. Huh? There it was again. Whatever Saojiro was getting at, Aoko had no idea.
それじゃ行くよ。今日はありがとう。
I'm gonna get going. Thanks again for today.
今日だけよ、今日だけ。
Yes, today. Today only. She shooed him away with her hand. His face bent a broad smile, as if he found gesture endearing. It was a softer expression than she had grown accustomed to seeing out of him. It was the kind of smile that you would make anyone smile back. Well, almost. Well, most people at least. Aoko Aozaki didn't betray the slightest hint of a smile.
それじゃまた。
See you later.
Huh?
And with that friendly farewell, Saojiro walked towards the end of the hallway. Or so she thought before he had turned to the next class over. Did he just... Saojiro headed straight towards one of the classroom windows. Yo, buddy, what are you doing? Yo, buddy! Yo, buddy, what are you doing? Buddy, what are you doing? Whereupon he opened it with ease. The chilly November air filled the room with soft sounds of rain doubled in volume. And that instant, she realized his intentions with opening the window. She really wished she hadn't. Yo, buddy! Buddy, what are you doing? No, stop! He already had one leg out the window when she dashed to stop him.
何するつもりよ、あんた。
Fuck are you doing?
何ってアルバイトに行くんだけど。
What am I doing? I'm leaving for my job. That's what.
その窓は人が出入りするところじゃないの。
You do know that this window isn't an exit, do you?
だいたいここ何階だと思ってるの？
I mean, do you even know what floor you're on? She saw the light of understanding dawn in his eyes.
死ぬところだった。2階から降りたら危なすぎる。
Oh my god. I almost died. Who would put an exit here? This is dangerous.
危ないのはあんたの頭。
It's the lack of something between your ears that's dangerous. Her insult went right over his head.
あのね、こっちじゃ窓から人は出入りしないの。さっき言っとくべきだったわ。
People here normally don't enter and exit through windows, okay? You should probably remember this information for future reference.
知ってるよ。時間がないんで慌ててたんだ。
Oh, I know. I just wanted to save some time.
ありがとう。これからは気をつける。
Thanks. I'll be more careful from now on. He pulled his leg back and closed the window. His school uniform was soaking wet from the rain.
いいけど、私は別に。
Hey, be my guest.
あなたがどこから外に出ようが関係ないもの。ただ、できれば私の前ではやらないでほしいだけよ。
Go outside any which way you like. Just don't do it in front of me from now on.
それより、あなた、本当に明日から学校に来るの？
Anyway, you start school tomorrow, right?
来るよ。不安だけど案内してもらったし。
Yeah, I'm a little nervous though, which is why I came early for the tour. What a fucking dipstick. Oh god. He bid her farewell before running away down the hallway. She hoped he would walk down the stairs, leaving through the school entrance like a normal person.
大丈夫なのかあんなんで。
Ugh, I wonder if he's really gonna be okay here. The image of him disappearing into the distance popped in her head in spite of her ear. She had no intentions of spending any more time with him, and yet she felt strangely anxious. She couldn't tell if it was being fueled by concern or irritation. Why had she even gotten angry with this insufficient transfer student in the first place? A strange day with a strange transfer student resulting in strange emotions. Her head tilted as she reflected on what should have been the most enjoyable day than the irritating experience she just had.
いっか。
Whatever.
どうせこれっきりなんだし。
It's not as if I'll see him again. The sound of the rain echoed quietly all around her. The gray sky seemed frozen in time. It was impossible to discern whether it was morning or evening. Mr. Yamashiro and Alko were likely the only ones left in the school. The unlit classroom locked over gloomingly and ominous as Alko stood alone. She pulled up her left sleeve. Her daunting, unremarkable watch showed that it was almost 1 o'clock.
時間合ってる。
He was right about the time. She looked out the window at the grounds below. She saw a boy in uniform running through the rain without an umbrella, a sight she must have seen before, but for whatever reason affected her far more than she wished. Alko did not stop by the faculty room before heading home. While Mr. Yamashiro offered to drive her home was tempting, she decided she would ultimately be far more She decided it would ultimately be far more satisfying to ruin his day just as he had ruined hers. How would that ruin his day? Wouldn't that ruin his day if he drove her home? Because then he has to waste gas. Whatever. She walked quietly as she could towards the entrance and opened a bright red umbrella. She had predicted that morning the rain was waning in the afternoon. At this rate, it would probably cease completely in an hour or so. The distant sunshine would likely have reached her by the time she arrived home.
ま、それも悪くないか。
Well, I suppose it could be worse. She shrugged her shoulders in resignation. She neither liked nor disliked rain, but she found herself enjoying her walk home while her red umbrella was in hand. The teachers at Misaki High School wasn't fond of the bright colors, so Alko's red umbrella was an unusual sight. A ghost story about an umbrella was once poured white had been making the rounds, but it featured Alko instead of a ghost. It was with the umbrella she had made her way towards Misaki Station. The private Misaki High School got its name from the town of the same name. The area was once a sprawl of farmland and woodland, but rapid growth over the last 10 years had led to the unprecedented modernization. There were some who fought to preserve Misaki's natural
残
treasures.
すことには賛成ですが、それでは残すだけになってしまうでしょう。
I agree in principle to preserving the land, but not at the expense of our prosperity. With those words, the mayor snuffed out the voices of the minority and unsheared in a long-term plan of new urban development. More than often, funds for urban development were collected, and the unassuming town of Misaki became the largest municipality of Misaki City in merely 10 years. Even though it lacked modernity of the neighboring Yashiragi, or the elegance of Misaki Hills.
それも当然よね。どういじくってももともとが山中の宿場町だし、山ごと切り崩すって言うんなら別だけど。
What did people expect? To keep the town hidden atop the mountains forever? It's not like they were gonna flatten the mountain or something. Urbanization had been contained to the lowlands around the station, with most of the hills and mountains still standing as they did 10 years prior. The exhaustion of funds succeeded in protecting the old Misaki where citizens could not. It became a truly odd suburban town, welcoming an increasingly urban population with its vestige of old country charm. Misaki High School was a private high school established long before the town's current state. The original campus, built 50 years ago, was located high up in the mountains, making this current location its second incarnation. The path to the old grounds was remote, steep, and with almost well trodden by animals. For these reasons, among others, Misaki High School had been shuttered until almost 20 years ago, when it received a donation from a department store chain that allowed for the construction of a new campus in the city. And thus, Misaki High School reopened its doors, the old Woodland campus forgotten. In fact, most of the students attending Misaki High School were not from Misaki at all. The hardy, rustic people of this country town preferred prefectural schools to the private ones. Truth be told, Alka herself was one of them. All she had wanted after junior high was to move to Tokyo, where she hoped to spend her days enjoying live music on her way to entering a public university. But her hopes were dashed with her sister's departure, so here she was, walking alone in a town with only a red umbrella keeping her company on what should have been her day off.
思い返してみると、私の人生ってなんか災難続きっぽい。
Looking back on it, it's like my whole life has been one disaster after another. Her frustration evaporated into the cold December air.
でもいっか。退屈だけはしないわけだし。
Oh well, at least it's not boring. With those words, her mood brightened as soon as she left the school in her wake. The bruisier parts of town met her at the bottom of a gently sloping road. Misaki's train station was brand new. Once looking no prettier than an abandoned factory, it had been renovated into a multi-purpose structure with huge department stores on east and west sides. When the department store first opened, Alko and her friends had been impressed with their modern feel, but in time, the stores became dated. She had no shopping to do today, so she passed them by. What she really wanted to do was rest at a cafe, but she fought the urge, knowing her roommate would never let her hear the end of it if she frittered away her money. What is happening? Hmm? She looked back and blinked. For just a moment, she could have sworn she had seen someone suspicious in a red dress out the corner of her eye. Whoa, that was weird. It must have been her imagination. The sixth-sense chill she was experiencing down her spine was a familiar one at this point. She continued to walk home, brushing off the events as if it had never happened. In time, the chill faded, and all that was left was the sound of the town. She sighed heavily. Had she imagined it? Even if it all had been in her head, she was far from comfortable with the feeling that still lingered.
夏場の蚊だってもう少しこう。
Even mosquitoes have the grace to buzz off eventually. She grumbled under her breath.
波乱万丈、商売繁盛、諸行無常と。
Whether good or bad, this too shall pass, so the saying goes.
そうそう。忙しさに愚痴を言っても始まらないわ。
Yeah, I got enough on my plate as it is. Unfortunately, summer and bugs go hand in hand. She could see how bugs could be drawn to all the sweet fruit. Yay, music! Ranked with grease and heat, the kitchen was closed for the time being. The lunch rush had come and gone. But one last battle remained, dinner time. Only after the evening chaos could the kitchen crew remove their white armor call it a day. In the midst of the war zone was a lone newcomer.
これ着るんですか？
Do I have to wear this? His voice was uneasy, betraying how new he was.
気持ちはわかる。俺もどうかと思うけど、店長の言うことだから、もう笑顔で乗り越えてくれ。これも商店街の明日のためなんだとよ。
I know.
申し訳ないんだが、雨も止んだし、なんとか行ってきてくれないか？無事帰ってきたら晩飯おごってやっから。
I know how you feel, man. I feel the same. Unfortunately, it's his boss's orders. You'll have to suck it up today. The future of the shopping arcade is at stake. Apparently, I really hate to ask, but the rain stopped, so would you mind going out for me? Get back in one piece. I'll buy you dinner. His bright orange coworker clasped his hands together as if to beg for forgiveness, as he saddened him with the unreasonable task. Ew, it's so party. 10 years ago, Misaki City was a town of farm and woodland. But everything had changed when the Fire Nation attacked. I'm just kidding. Everything had changed. The front of the station was now lined with tall multi-story buildings, and residential areas were similarly full of apartment complexes. The once rustic scenery around the station had long become a thing of the past. Shirone Nuzuka was Shirone Nuzuka. Shirone Nuzuka was the only place in the city that still contained vestige of the old town, a pocket of the past inside of an urban jungle. The road extended up conspicuously high hills to an old residential district far from the hustle and bustle of the train station. Long ago, it had been considered unwise to build high ground, so nobody lived above a certain elevation. Shirano Nuzuka, sitting as it did atop a hill in the middle of town, was no exception to that convention and had no residents to speak of. The asphalt continued for some time, eventually giving way to the mountain road that was swallowed into the cover of trees. A lone vending machine stood the mark of the boundary between town and beyond. Even the children knew that there was nothing beyond the power the new playground developed that had so enthralled them. Well, that's not entirely true. There was nothing besides the haunted house. Kawasaki traversed long slopes. Below her, she could see the whole of Misaki. The symmetrical town looked like a miniature set from this height. It would look like a painting if there had been a sea next to it, but unfortunately, Misaki City was very much landlocked. While it was overcast at the moment, the scene was quite breathtaking on clear evenings. The view was one thing that made the arduous climb worthwhile, and today she had been denied even that.
ああ、雨の日は自転車も使えないし、 1日に2回ぐらいバスでも通ってくれないもんかな、ほんと。
I'd cycle home if it wasn't for this rain. Even a bus route would be a fine thing. Alco had been using this road to get to school for almost 2 years now, but the journey had never gotten easier.
あれ、鍵閉まったまま？
It's locked.
アリス、まだ帰ってきてな
I
いんだ。
guess Alice isn't back yet. With a weary shrug, she put her hand on the rusty iron fence. Quietly, the heavy gates swung open as if to welcome her home. This song? They're playing this song? Yo, what the fuck? I can't believe they're playing this song. There still sits atop the hill a haunted house. Wow, that's nuts, actually. Dun, 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 dun. Oh my goodness, this song is so popular. I can't remember what the song is called, but I hear the song every time. Anyway, that is how the story much shared around the town used to begin. But fresh rumors about the house had sprung to life almost as fast as the town's modernization. Despite being dilapidated and abandoned for many years, life can be seen inside the house at night. An angry murder of crows often gathered atop a hill before mysteriously vanishing. Children get lost in the fog, never to be seen again. Late at night, a shrieking sound can be heard all the way to town. This particular piece of slander was the one Alco wished to discredit the most. The final rumor was of an eye-catching luxury car that sometimes made its way up and down the hill. The rumors spread and grew by day. And while they grew, the house that everyone thought had rotted away was restored over recent years. Deep in a woods on top of the hill, no one dared to approach. Like a ruined shroud from view, even on the brightest days, stood a relic out of time, a building from a fairy tale. The house. Was Kaonji Mansion. Everyone in town knew about the witch's house on the hill. What's up, Bubba J. Lee? What's up, Bubba J. Lee? Quick question. Do you think centaurs have 2 rib cages or just one extra long one? They have 2. They have 2. They have 2, right? I don't know! Wait a minute, hold on, stop. I think they have rib cages because their actual body needs it. But a rib cage is needed in order to keep they probably have 4 for the bottom half, right? They just have 1. No, they have 2. I think they have 2. They have 2. Just the 2 for the top. But they gotta hold the rest of the body up. So I would assume it'd be like a long spine, right? And then you'd have your like hooves. What would be holding those together? It's gotta be 4. They have 4 because of the bottom, right? They got the bottom. Because that needs to be held up too. Anyway, back to the story. An unabashingly haunted house where Alco Aozaki resided for reasons unknown. Probably for that damn centaur question. Since centaurs have 2 different hips, they do have 2 penises.
What?
Needless to say, it's not really haunted. The Konju family home was grand western style mansion with a long and storied history stretching all the way back to England. It was too small to be a dormitory, yet too big to be called a house. The main building contained as many as 3 normal houses worth of rooms and was surrounded by a large, all-encompassing courtyard. The parameters, I cannot speak right now. The parameters of the ground were surrounded by a high iron fence covered in thorny vines. There also was an annex to the main building. Aniplex. Given such extravagances, it was no wonder that it inspired rumors. Oh shit! It's Bubba J. Lee. Thanks for following, Bubba. Did you? Oh, speaking of Aniplex, that's the company this game. You probably can't see it. There it is, Aniplex. So yeah, I made that joke for a reason. Are you here for the story? Like, or just the energy that I exquisited from that question? Anyway, to the town residents, a mere existence of such a lavish and out-of-place mansion on the top of the hill was a cause of suspicion. Rumor, lies, and slanders were the price to be paid for fame. With only two lodgers, it was hard to disagree with the perception that vampires must be living here.
ま、私はともかく、アリスはそういうのやりかねないし。
Well, I know I'm not one, but wait a minute, can I understand what the narrator's saying? It's kind of weird, isn't it? Fuck it. If Deadpool can do it, I can do it. She put her hand on the front door. The mental damage I caused was worth a follow. Okay, that's dope. Tyrone TG3 having mental breakdowns for your viewing pleasure. It was a grand double door that would have paired well with a brass lock, and yet it was secure with little more than a simple keyhole. I hope you stick around for the story, though, too, Bubba. Pushing it open with one hand, she entered the supposedly haunted house. And by the way, if vampires were not enough to scare you, ghosts were known to appear on certain nights. Oh shit, this song is in here too! It's like all the little classic songs are just in this game. Much like the weather outside, the foyer was overcast with shades of gray. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect had chosen not to include any lights in the entrance area. The ceiling was two floors high. Why did they do that? That means at nighttime, if you come into the house, it's just dark. The only light in the room came from the skylight. It was particularly gloomy on rainy days. On moonless nights, it was like the world itself ceased to be. Alco decided the drawing room to the east would be a good place to rest, but knowing that she would not be able to relax until she changed clothes, she started up the steps. The stairs curled up the walls to the second floor hall. There was a third floor attic as well, accessible from the far end of the hall. She had never set foot in there in 2 years she had lived there though. In the 2 years she lived there though. The Konji mansion was more or less divided into 2 wings, east and west. Alco had been given the entire east wing, but 2 rooms were more than enough as far as she was concerned. She had no desire to open a door that would trap you in a storybook world or lead to an attic that had only been used for storage these last 5 years. Alco's room was at the end of the west wing long corridor. She had elected for a smaller room for no other reason other than that she thought it would be easier to clean. It was furnished with a large bed. Her beloved mahogany desk was a wardrobe and chest of her clothes, and 2 9-shelf bookcases. It was all she brought with her from home. She entered life of a 16-year-old reduced to this. She borrowed the next room down for her own purposes.
そうだ。アリスにもらった見張りと壊れてないかチェックしないと。
Oh yeah, I should check on the watchtower I got from Alice. Check that record player, Jack. She needed to see if the project she had been working on all night had borne fruit. The study next door served as proof of the life she had been living for the last year and how different that life was from the one she had lived before. It was not a room for the person she had been. It was a room for the person that she would eventually become. A place of solitude that only she could enter, or so she thought.
うわ、壊れてるどころか跡形もなく消え去ってる。やっぱ自己流アレンジはまだ早かったか。いいわよ。笑いなさいよ、コマドリ。
Wow, not only did it break, it vanished without a trace. Looks like I've still got a long way to go. Go ahead, laugh it up, Robin. Tweet! Tweet, motherfucker, tweet! The noisy neighbor that had intruded on her sanctuary flew away. While not exceptionally talented, Alco did not lack for effort and was not afraid to fail. One could have almost mistaken her approach for optimism. What are you doing, girl? Oh, she's changing. Hey, look at that best time to wear a striped sweater. It's all the time. She changed out of her uniform and returned to the first floor. One with the turtleneck. That's the kind. Take it away, Penny. Down the stairs. Oh, wait. She changed out of her uniform and returned. Oh, yeah, I read that. Down to the stairs, she opened the door to the east wing into the corridors as dark as the cellar. The absence of windows meant that it was pitch black without lights on, so she flicked the switch and entered the nearby doorway. There's a television? Yo, is that a television? Life without electricity? I don't even want to imagine it. It had been our idea to update the drawing room. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, and around the room were large, majestic sofas and a luxurious Persian rug. Amidst it all was a 30-inch television that seemed completely out of place. It does seem out of place. It stood looking over the furniture like an emperor with no clothes. The mansion owner would have rather done without it, but to a commoner like Alco, it was essential commodities. They had fought over its presence at first, but eventually came to an agreement, and now mutually enjoyed the modern comfort. Guess I'm one to talk. I came from a pretty traditional household myself. Now in a somewhat pleasant mood, she decided to brew some tea. A sport of tea. She boiled some water in the kitchen and prepared a teapot she had made for herself and some black tea. With a flop, she sank into the sofa. She took a sip of her tea and then another. It's nice. It's nice. These are moments we'll always remember for the rest of our lives. So take it all in. Lulled by the ticking of the clock, she took a third sip as she pondered how to spend her afternoon. The sofa almost seemed to be inviting her, and she snuck even further into its comforting embrace. Oh shit! Alco barely opened her eyes as she lifted her body up from the cushions. This was no dream or delusion. At some point, a girl had sat across from her. Not the least bit surprised, she reached for her teacup. But the tea within it had been completely
寝
cold.
てた。
Did I doze off? She asked a question to the girl on the other side of the table. Yeah? The girl answered without lifting a gaze. When silent, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful doll. The girl sitting on the opposite sofa was reading an old book. She had delicate limbs and pale white skin. Not a hint of humanity emanated from her melancholic aura. She had darker hair than Alco, and her icy eyes were focused on pages in front of her. Her clothes resembled that of a nun, but were actually her school uniform. In Alco's humble opinion, the gloominess suited her. She invoked something, like out of a painting. There was something unreal about her, as if she were frozen in time. The white of her neck was so lovely that even Alco herself was enchanted by it. The girl was one of the house's 2 residents. Her name was Alice Konji, and she was the same age as Alco.
私、どれくらい寝てた？
How long was I asleep?
1時間と少し。ここで眠ると風邪ひくわよ。
At least an hour. You'll catch a cold if you keep sleeping here. Alice answered indifferently. Not that it bothered Alco who she was, now that she's used to it. She looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 7. She had been asleep for 2 hours. The day had been rough on her, and she had slept little the night before, so it was no surprise that she had dozed off as long as she had.
起こしてくれてもよかったのに。
You could have woken me up.
せっかくの紅茶が冷めちゃ
Now
った
my
じゃない。
tea is cold.
私が来た時はもう冷めてたわ。
It was already cold by the time I got here.
でしょうね。行ってみただけよ。
I'm sure it was. I'm just saying. Alco drank down the rest of the cold tea in one gulp. In the poorly heated Kononji mansion, that was more than enough to clear her head and wake up.
こうなると、フォートナム&メイソンも何もないわね。
Nothing quite beats this tea, not even the expensive kind from Britain.
おかえり、アリス。玉の贅沢もあんた抜きじゃ閉まらないってことかしら。
Anyway, welcome home, Alice. The universe seems determined to keep me from even the occasional luxuries without you.
今日は薬日か天中殺か。ちょっと早いけど、お参りってのも十分ありかもね。
Oh, what is it about today? And it's just my luck or what? At this rate, I'm due a temple visit to just be safe. Alco shrugged her shoulders as if she was resigning herself to her fate.
それで何があったの？
Something happened. Something happened? After 2 years, they've known each other quite well. Alco had one way of asking questions, and Alice had another. Alice asked without raising her head, and Alco gave her the details.
まず謝らなくちゃいけない。
Is that her socks? I can't tell. I should start by
昨
apologizing.
日徹夜で完成させた例のあれ、意味がなくなっちゃったのよ。ちょっと目を離した隙に沸騰しすぎて壊れちゃったみたい。
The project I was working on all night was a total failure. Even though it only took my eyes off it for a second, it must have boiled over and been
そうなら
destroyed.
ないよ。循環のコードを 2,3 本外したり縫合したりしたんだけど。
Though I'll add that I shuffled the circulation codes as precautions. Alco tried to laugh it off, as if someone else's problem.
どういうこと？
And?
今朝休養が入って学校に呼び出し受けたの。そこで転入生の世話を押し付けられて1日が無残にも消費されちゃって、帰ってきたら跡形もなく消えてました。
Something came up this morning, and I was called to school. They made me show this transfer student around, and it took up my whole day. By the time I got back, it had vanished without a trace.
怒るアリス。
You're mad, are you? You're not mad, are you?
青子の器物破損にいちいち怒っていたら一生分の口論をすることになるでしょ。
Hardly. If I got mad every time you broke something, there'd be no end to the fighting.
代用品はあるからまた一から始めればいいわ。
I have more materials, so you can just start over.
それより怒ってるのはあなたの方じゃないの？
However, aren't you really the one who's angry? Alice was very much on point today. It was true that despite outward appearances, Alco was seething with some frustration. That aside,
この転入生っていうのがひどくずれててね。
true enough, the transfer student I mentioned earlier was a real piece of work.
すごい山奥で暮らしてたらしくて、こっちの常識が通じないんだから。三問以下って言葉があるけど、あれって本当のことなのね、アリス。
He's been living deep in the mountains and literally has no common sense. I know people say that the mountains are like an entirely different world, but I had no idea how true it was, Alice. Alice raised her head in response to hearing her name. But Alco kept going on before she could get a word in edgewise. Alco, after all, expected no sympathy in the first place.
初対面から尺に触るやつだったけど、教室を案内した時なんか失神しそうになったわ。
We didn't get along well from the start, but things really took a turn for the worse when I took him into the
こい
classroom.
つ、教室で教師と1対1で授業を受けるもんだと思ってたらしいの。それはそれでまだ流せる。許容範囲よ、あの程度の冗談は。
He apparently thought it was a place where you go to get one-on-one tutoring, and that's not all. I mean, you're never gonna believe this.
で、私が簡潔かつ丁寧に教室の何たるかを教えた後で、そいつなんて言ったと思う？
What do you think he asked when I politely explained what a classroom is to him?
それで青崎、他の教室は何に使うんだ？
But then, what are the other classrooms for?
ですって。
Unbelievable, right?
教室に他も何もないでしょ？
I mean, a classroom is a classroom.
なんていうか、そいつは少しでも説明を怠るとそのままで納得しちゃうのよ。
And no matter how vague or unhelpful anything I said was, he just kept nodding.
何も疑問に思わないというか、想像力が欠如してるっていうか、想像することに慣れてないっていうか。
It's like he was just taking everything at face value. I don't know if he's just lacks in imagination or never uses it.
まあ、一度言ったことはちゃんと分かってるっぽいから、バカってわけじゃないんだけど。
Anyway, he at least seemed to grasp some of what I told him in the first time around, so I suppose he's not a complete idiot.
あなたが人を批評するのは珍しいわね。そういうダメな人、気にするたちだったの？
It's rare to see you so judgmental. Is it really worth getting worked up over someone like that?
みじんたりとも気にしないわよ。けど、明日からどんな間違いをしでかすのか、ちょっと心配なだけ。
I couldn't care less about him. I'm just worried he'll screw up somehow. We will live to tell the story. There's nothing we can't live through. Nothing ever dies. We'll rise again. Oh God, not that reference. It's Dragon Ball. Well, what she really was worried about was having to clean up some mess if and when it happened. That had to be it. If not, it would mean that she had no real idea why she could not get him out of her head.
とにかく変なやつなの。案外アリスと気が合うかも。
Well, he's a weirdo, all right. You two would probably hit it off great.
三問異界はいい言葉ね。
Another world in the mountains doesn't sound so bad. But from her eyes, it was clear that the question of whether they would get along was irrelevant, given that they would never meet in the first place. Alco gave a non-committal response.
ところでアリス、さっきから何を読んでる？
Anyway, what have you been reading?
霊的進化論の二次創作スピリチュアルダイアリのまがいもの
A book about spiritual evolution based on the spiritual diary.
ああ、スウェーデンボリー。そんなの今更読んでも仕方ないんじゃない？
Ah, Swedenborg, huh? Is it really worth reading again?
新書なら退屈だ
No,
けど
never played the Metal
What
Gear
about
series.
Gisela?
I know of the Metal Gear series, but I've never played any games from it. I wouldn't bother if it were the original, but this is a knockoff.
彼の欠点と長所を劇的に褒め上げているよくできた冒険小説のようよ立ちはだかる秘密組織の名前がカントとか気が利いているわ
It exaggerates the pros and cons of the Swedenborg style and reads like a well-written adventure. Having the secret organization Kant stand in his way is a nice addition.
筆跡はあなたのおじいさんのものだけど
The handwriting of notes in the margin belongs to your grandfather, by the way.
へえ、あの人そういう趣味まであったんだ。割とユーモアがあったのね。欲し
Huh?
い人を亡くしたわ。
I had no idea he was into that sort of thing. He had a great sense of humor. I really miss him. Alco seemed more nostalgic over her now deceased grandfather.
あなたのおじいさん夏に頼りをくれたけど
He just contacted you last summer, didn't he?
よしてよ。死んだものと考えたいのに。
Do we really have to go there? Why can't the dead just stay dead? Alco sighed and laid back in her sofa. The sofa cushions caved under her weight.
話は戻るけど
As I was saying, Alice shot a glance at Alco. Her body buried in the sofa remained as still as a corpse. It was clear Alco had tuned out of the conversation. Alice silently chastised her with a look. The more she thought about it, the less important the events of the day seemed to become. If she just ignored Alice, the conversation would end there. The way they would eventually get up and leave today's mistake unresolved for another day. However, that's not the kind of person Alco Aozaki was.
いいわよ。何？
Yeah? What is it? She asked, still lying down.
今日できなかったのは少し痛いわね
It's upsetting that you failed today.
だから反省してるって。学校優先は一人前になってからでしょ。
Like I said, I'm thinking about it. I need to focus on becoming a full-fledged mage before thinking about school. I know that.
ならいいけど
I hope you do. The coldness in her voice made Alco gnash her teeth. She knew that what Alice wanted to say. She knew better than anyone. The veneer she wore for school was different than the way she lived at home. While it could be called hiding in plain sight, Alice thought it was silly. And what the silence told her was,
覚悟を決めろって言いたいのよね、あんたは。
make up your mind already. I know. Today's failure was not a colossal one. She just happened to upset the delicate balance between her home and her school lives, chasing one at the expense of the other. And yet, that careless mistake was a clear sign of Alco's lack of commitment.
アリスは関係ない。これは私が私で決めなくちゃいけないこと。
This doesn't concern Alice. It's my decision to make. She only had known for sure that the last year and a half, but she had a hunch for as long as she could remember. Make the choice, and the day'll come. It was little wonder why her morals and coincide had been stripped away. Her morals and conscience had been stripped away. Alco pushed herself back up. She was met by Alice's cold beauty and wordless gaze.
オッケー、アリス。来週中に決着をつけよう。
Okay, Alice. We can do it next week.
それでいいんでしょ？
Will that work for you?
ええ青子がいいなら
As long as it works for you. Alco could not help but shake her head, feeling like she was hearing something similar for the second time that day. Even in the comfort of her own home, she couldn't banish the thought of that country boy from her mind.
じゃあ下準備はよろしくね。私まだできないし。
I'll let you set it up. That's still beyond my abilities.
場所は例の公園でいい？
Should we do that at the park?
妥当な線ね。あ、でももう一軒の方は？
Sure, the lines there are suitable enough. But what about the other
そっ
thing?
ちの方が急務じゃない？
Isn't that more of urgent concern?
時と場合、森に変化があれば教えるわ。
It depends more on the conditions. I'll let you know if anything changes in the woods. After that brief exchange, Alice returned her attention to the book on her lap. Shop talk was over. Now they could return to their normal relationship as roommates. Alco grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Since Alice was busy reading, Alco decided to tune into various shows that had already started. Alice started to speak, but suddenly cut herself off. One of her delicate hands raised to her mouth. She would always cut herself off the second she realized she was about to say something trivial. Sometimes her self-restraint would hit too late, and she would make a gesture like one that she's making now. It occurred to Alco that the ah sound her cute little roommate had just made just now differed from the wah she blurted in the past times.
何？
What is it? Alco turned down the volume on the TV. Her intense eyes lit up and like a mischievous cat.
どうということはないんだけど。
It's nothing really, but
ないんだけど？
But what? Alice looked away, bashfully not knowing if she should bring it up or not. It was times like these that her expression carried a real warmth and surprising charm. If she could see her in this moment, Alice's father would have admit that her name suited her perfectly.
今日帰ってくるときおかしなものを見て誰かに話そうと思っていたんだけど。
It's just, I saw something strange on my way home and wanted to tell someone about it. Alco nodded, beckoning her to continue.
つまらない。本当に意味のないことよ。
It's silly, really.
けど、どう考えてもそんなことをする理由がわからない。
But I just can't make sense of it no matter how much I come to think about it.
人間ぐらいの大きな猫がひょこひょこ出前をする理由ってわかる？
Alco, do you have any idea why a man-sized cat would be riding around town, delivering meals to people? For a second, Alco thought Alice was trying and failing miserably to make a joke again. One would think that about anyone, really. But she seemed completely serious. Even if Alice's sense of humor fell flat for Alco, this story already sounded more fan-fictional than Alice's usual attempt at jokes. Alco concluded that her roommate was talking about something that she had actually seen.
その話には2つぐらい信じがたい部分があるけど。
There's a few things off about that. Maybe we should break it down.
いいの？私もからくりぐらいは思いつくから。
Let's not. Even I can't think of any mundane explanations.
理由がわからないから聞いてるの。わざわざ精巧な猫のぬいぐるみを着て出前のてんやものを届けに行くことってそんなに簡単かしらね。
I'm just asking because I can't figure out why somebody would do that. Maybe it's as simple as someone just dressing up in a finely crafted catsuit to deliver food for a restaurant?
難易度以前にそれをやる人間の常識性を疑うけどね、私は。
I'm more worried about the person doing it than their reason, personally. Alice nodded attentively at her words.
世の中いろいろあるから、私たちみたいなのもいれば、下界から遮断された山奥で暮らしていたやつまで10人といるよ。
But whatever does it for him, I guess. In a world with people like us and weirdos like that living in the mountain hermits, there's no telling what kind of freaks are out there.
私だったら見かけたら声かけて理由を尋ねただろうけど。
I personally would have just gone up to them and asked why they're doing it. Alice's gaze drifted at that.
ふん。暮れゆく住宅街にさまよう出前猫か。
A
背
delivery
景が夕焼けだったらファンタジーだったでしょうに。
a delivery cat riding around through the neighborhood in the evening. Sounds like something straight out of a fantasy story.
今日の夕飯どうする？せっかく話が出たし、私らもてんやものにしようか。
Hey, what should we do for dinner tonight? Speaking of delivery, maybe we should order in. Alco loved getting takeout, and her face glowed as she spoke. They had no hard rules for dinner, but if one of them was in the mood to cook, they made it a point to make enough for two. At the very worst, this meant that entire 2 weeks without dinner, but the two of them agreed that this meant entire weeks without dinner, but the two of them agreed that this was the system that worked the best for them. Whether they found cooking to be too much effort or simply liked ordering out. Nights like this one were common occurrences, much to the chagrin of the restaurant of the Masaki town. Delivering to the mansion meant coming all the way up to the top of the hill, the source of their
時
disgruntlement.
間は8時前。ギリギリセーフね。私今月がいいな。あそこの月見そば最近ご無沙汰だったし。
It's still before 8, so we're good. I'm really in the mood for kongetsu tonight. I haven't had their they haven't had their suki misoba in ages. The hungry council student president looked out their way. The hungry student council president took out their many menus and excitedly looked for any that stood out. Alice casually responded without sparing as much of a glance.
悪いけど私夕飯済んでるの。
Sorry, but I already had dinner. Oof. Oof! With those words, Alco froze. All delivery required a minimum of 2 items, so she was out of luck without an accomplice. Cruelty subsided. Why don't you just order it for 2 and then just eat both? I don't get it. Anyway, Cruel Society had decided it couldn't be bothered to deliver to a princess who only ordered a single serving of food. Incidentally, to counteract orders from Hilltop Mansion, the restaurant had declared the minimum number of orders will be 3 starting next year. Alco and Alice were still in the dark to this fiendish change in direction. Traitor!
だから帰ってくるのが遅かったのね。
Is that why you're so late getting back?
帰宅部、学校までバス徒歩込みで片道20分のあんたがなんで5時以降に帰ってくんのか考えるべきだったわ。
Between the bus ride and the walk and the trip home takes only 20 minutes, I should have known there was something up when you didn't get home before 5 o'clock. Unfortunately for Alco, she had been too out of it to even remember that she was the one who had fallen asleep.
ああ、ひどい女。そういう時は残された一人のためにお土産買ってくるのが暗黙の了解だったのに。
Talk about Ice Queen. I thought it was clear that if either of us got food, we would bring home enough for the other person.
私だってこの前の外食の時はアリスの分も買ってきたじゃない。
Didn't I bring some for you when I ate out last time? It was unknown how serious Alco was being, but she was visibly angry. She had already woken up hungry that morning, but from the time that she was called out into school until now, she had consumed nothing but tea. It was a small miracle that her stomach was not growling. She knew that it was her own fault, but she persisted, wanting to get revenge on Alice for scolding her earlier.
この前ってあれのこと？
By last time, you mean
あなたが都心に出向いた
the
時
time you went into the city and ate sushi, but only came back with a plastic bag full of convenience store food at the time? Alco had kicked a hornet's nest.
何よ。
So
買っ
what?
てないよりはマシでし
It
ょ。
was better than nothing, wasn't it?
真実は時に隠蔽すべきね。
There are times when you'd be better off not saying anything at all. Damn, these bitches about to square up. Alice's icy gaze pierced right through her. Alco had certainly crossed the line by going on and on about how the sushi circled around the restaurant while Alice ate her convenience store meal. But new things fascinated her, and she couldn't contain her curiosity towards the conveyor belt sushi shop that had started popping up at the time. They were nothing short of miraculous. Even honesty can be a sin, given the right circumstances.
わかった。わかりました。
Fine, fine, I get it. Does this at least mean that we're even now? Alice went back to her book without so much as recognizing the question. The fact that she did not confirm it made Alco look anxious.
仕方ない。今日は薬味だし。
Well, today's been a total disaster. I guess I'll just whip something up in the kitchen. She stood up, announcing her intent to no one in particular.
聞き忘れてた。
I almost forgot.
どこで夕食するの？
Where'd you end up eating anyway? Alice's hand froze on her current page. She suddenly shut the book she was reading and stood up as if it was at wit's end. She walked across the drawing room with her book in hand. When she reached for the door, she had stopped and turned towards Alco.
聞きたい。
You really want to know?
まあ、なんとなく。
Sure. Alco nodded timidly, cowed by Alice's sudden vigor. Alice continued in her matter-of-fact way.
その猫が余ったメニューをくれたのよ。
That cat gave me one of his leftover deliveries. And with that, a brief response, she left the room. Is that it? Oh, nice. Did I just happen to hit where the... Oh, I just happened to hit the... Wow, the timing's amazing. I mean, yeah, we're 21 minutes over, but I had to... I don't know. You all know how I am with visual novels. If something doesn't feel like it's quite a stopping point, then I'll keep going until I hit a stopping point. I just happened to hit a stopping point, that's all. But that's crazy. Okay, so we did it. Wait a minute, what's archives? What the hell is this? Oh. Seven days of spinning. What the hell? What is going on? What is this? I don't know what that is, but... What is this? Cats and mistakes, stars and death. What are all of these? The girl in the mansion. What are these? Are these like bonus chapters? Well, anyway, I guess we're at the end for now. So, with that being said, tomorrow we do not stream. It's Thursday. However, Friday we'll be here for Pokemon Scarlet and the Violet tour. So, if you haven't joined the Discord already, make sure you join the Discord. Join that Discord. That way you can join us for the shenanigans, because I'll be streaming that.